Good evening and welcome to our listeners and viewers to Good News Catholic Communications and to this program this evening as we discuss the bill titled Age of Civil Legal Responsibility. This bill has generated plenty of debates, highlighting both its usefulness, which will give victims of abuse the opportunity to have their voices heard, and also the loopholes, which as some call it, which can tear the fabric and cause devastation to families. I want to make it clear as we start that it is not the church's role to object or say yes, rather to listen and find common ground for the common good. This also emphasizes the church's commitment to being a synodal church and remind us that we are on a pilgrimage of hope. Some may say this is politics and the church has no right in politics. Rather, church and politics are one because the people who partake in politics are part of the church. I would ask some mutual respect from our audience, callers, and of course, I know our panelists who are all professionals will maintain a proper decorum. We will entertain questions or comments both via phone calls and Zoom. And we also ask that the comments be to the point, and we will put a 1 minute limit so that everyone will have an opportunity to ask a question or express themselves. Welcome to that special tete-a-tete program. And as we begin, I would invite our Bishop Clyde Harvey, to give some opening remarks before I introduce our panelists for tonight.
Thank you, Kison. And welcome to everybody. I see a full screen in front of me. There must be about 25 people online, and I'm sure there are others who are not coming up on my screen. But it's good for us to be here, and just to remind you, what happened was that a few weeks ago, we had a program at this time, and we were experimenting, and we continue to experiment in the hope that we find the best way forward for us as Christian Catholics or Catholic Christians seeking to communicate with each other and with the wider world. That's very important because as Catholics, we're not just interested in our own salvation. The first thing about the gospel is that Jesus comes to proclaim the kingdom of God. And we are seeking, both by the life we live and by our discussion, our mutual interactions, to discern how the kingdom of God is present in this world in which we live. The Catholic Church has a rich tradition of ethical discourse, talking about the moral issues. Jesus came not simply to save us for the next life, but to enable us to live our lives here on this earth as a beginning of a kingdom life. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. When it comes to morality, we have always followed a certain structure. Anybody or any group seeking to make moral decisions is invited to understand that in the first place, you look to the scriptures, where you see how God himself is at work in the life of the people he called as his own among the Israelites, and then eventually the Jews who became part of the message and the kingdom. And then we believe firmly that Christ is present in the church, so that it's in the church and through the church that we are living this moral life, and it is in discussion within the church that we find the best way forward as we face various moral dilemmas. The situations we face were not even imaginable for the people who wrote the first gospel stories or the letters of Paul. But what we have is a way of dealing with that. So for those of you who are Catholic, and even for those of you who are not, we suggest what has always been the teaching of the church. So there are three things you take into account when you have a new moral situation to face or a moral challenge to encounter. First of all, you ask yourself, what does the scriptures say? What is the Word of God, which is the Bible, and which represents the one who is the Word of God? What does the Word of God have to say to us that may be relevant to the discussion that we have? So you search the scriptures as far as you know the scriptures. And then secondly, what does the tradition say? And that is important for Catholics, because the tradition is nothing less than how the church has lived the scriptural revelation over 2,000 years. And it's amazing when you look at it, how that has happened. And then there's a third factor that comes in. What is the reality that we are facing today? What is the reality that we are facing today? And so we invite people, and this is part of tonight's program, to share with us what is this reality that we're facing today? How are our children doing? And our first consideration must be our children. But then in the midst of that, what are the obligations of a government, of a people, and particularly of parents as they try to guide their children along the right path? Tonight's discussion is a beginning of a discourse which I hope will take a little while, over weeks perhaps, if the government doesn't rush the bill. But let us hope that we are able to come together as a community in which there are differences. Grenada has a fundamental choice to make as to whether it will be solely a Christian country guided by the Christian Bible, or whether it will be open to other views, other discourse as part of our life together. So, brothers and sisters, let us all be excited by the prospect of living out this God-given task that the Lord gives us, to live a full human life. We believe that Christ is a model of that life, but Christ is not the only thing, the only person we listen to on the road.
Thank you very much, Bishop Harvey. And Bishop Harvey rightly put it, we are on this journey together. And joining us on this journey, we have two esteemed panelists. I will start with, directly on my right, we have Miss Jeanette James. And I would not go into the introduction. I would like her to introduce herself when we begin. She has a wide acumen, wide experience. And then to my extreme right, I think this is my first time having two bishops, and not just two bishops, one Catholic and Bishop Devon Rashid, Bishop of the Alliance of Evangelical Churches.
Yes, I'm with the Alliance, yes.
Right. And tonight we are going to discuss the bill. And as I stated earlier, in a healthy space. I know many people are passionate about it. I've seen the flare-ups on Facebook and social media and person. But tonight we want to take it down a bit and really go through and really talk it out as to how best we can come to a solution to bring our country forward. So good night, my panelists, and I would like to introduce yourself, Ms. James.
Good night, and thank you so much for having me. Jeanette, next to my name you would see advocate. Advocate for justice, advocate for women's rights and children's rights. And I have spent more than 20 years of my life working with youth development and advocating for women's rights and empowerment and children's rights. In a nutshell, that's who I am.
Yes, it's so good to be here, really a pleasure. And as you rightfully said, I am evangelical and I am the Bishop of Agape Ministries. I have had the opportunity to serve and advocate on many issues over the years. Having served in the public sphere, I am a known voice for issues pertaining to family values and all of that. It is good to be on this program, and especially a program that we had opening remarks by Bishop Harvey, who is one of my good colleagues. I always enjoy being in discourse with him, and Good evening to all viewers and listeners, those who are following on social media as well. We're looking forward to a good discussion. I think it's healthy to have discussions on such issues as a country, and we are blessed to be able to have the environment in which to do so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Bishop Rashi. So we're going to go straight into it. The age of civil legal responsibility. Bill that in the last month, I know it died on during Carnival and it came back up very hot after Carnival. I'll start with Jeanette first. There's a perception that the bill will undermine family, and you said you're an advocate. Our parents' responsibility to protect. How would you like to see these fears addressed in the way that the bill is structured? You know, I do have the bill here, but I want to start off with this first before we go into the bill itself.
Okay. I'm hoping that you'd share that question with Devon.
Of course.
So for me, and what I choose not to say in the beginning, I'll say now. For persons that know me know that I am the president for Program for Adolescent Mothers, and also vice president for Caribbean Women in Leadership. I am affiliated to GNCRC through my position in PAM. I'm also part of community groups, and so CSO business has been my business and has been my business since I've been a teenager. But I took a stand when this amendment came out. Though I am part of women's organizations regionally, internationally, and locally, and to spearhead an institution like PAM, for persons that know it's our only institution on island that takes care of the continued education, academic process, and even self-building life skills training, and so for adolescent mothers and their babies as well. I had to touch this because most importantly, I'm a mother. So it's an interesting question. I'm not just a mother, I've been a single mother. And I understand there's different types of family. And this bill hit home so hard for me. I could not imagine as a parent something that will challenge my ability to be there for my children. Understanding that there is a percentage and a high percentage of abuse out there, and being someone that champions for children, women and girls, boys, I have to say you cannot cut the parents out of the equation at all. In an event where the abuser is in the home, and being with Pam, I know this, that there are situations where the abuser comes from the home. And that's what I think persons defending will say, it's happening in the home and we need to protect them. But it's happening everywhere. And we cannot be complicit about the fact that there are predators everywhere. And to take parents out of it, it is unfair to them. It's unfair to our position. And to put it simply, if you're going to take this away from us, to be part of this decision making, then are you going to take the responsibility of sending them to school? Should I start putting a charge for their meals in the house and ask them to pay some bills? I have a responsibility that the law says, as parents, we have to take care of our children. We need to make sure that they have a right to education, they have a right to be fed, they have a right to be clothed. And so when it comes to protecting them, whether it is from violent abuse or sexual abuse, we also have the right to protect our children and to be part of this process. And to me, this bill opens up Pandora's box in many ways. As an advocate, there are things I support. An amendment to this, to the protection of children, I am for. Don't get me wrong. Too much loopholes, too much space, and it also gives the predators a playground to start saying to our 15-year-olds and our 14 and 16-year-olds, you're big enough to handle that for yourself. After they've prayed abuse and continue to do so, they now put our children in a different, space where they can do things outside of the parents. And let's be honest, children are going to do all kinds of things. I was young as well. So I'm one of those people that's not trying to be hypocrite about what children will get into. And now they have more access to all types of pornography and all kinds of things that we never had access to, or really it was limited. So I am not being biased or hypocrite to that fact. But let's deal with this in a way where we include our parents more and we include our children as well. Because believe it or not, this generation of Gen Zers are very intelligent. If it's one thing our generation of parents have done is see to it that our children are educated. And so with that education, they deserve a right to have a say as well in terms of their protection.
Mr. Brashe, I'd like to take a go at the question before we...
Yes, certainly it's great to have the opportunity to be here with Jeanette too. And I just listened to her explaining some of the work that she does with Program for Adolescent Mothers, and I have a lot of respect for the work of that organization. I want to say from the get-go that I am a product of teenage pregnancy. My mother had me when she was 14 years. And in those times, it was really, really difficult.
So am I.
All right? And so I am not ignorant of what has been happening in our society for a very long time. In fact, we know that there is a lot of predators in our society. Over a number of years, we have seen a lot of children hurt. We have seen young children, even babies, sometimes sexually harassed. I have had mothers who have had to call me as a pastor, distressed after trusting certain people with their children, and later finding out the time of things that happened. And the Bible speaks about such behaviors, and there's a special place that the Bible speaks about where such people should probably be. In fact, I'm going to read it so that the listeners and viewers can have an appreciation. It's in Matthew chapter 18 and verse 6. The Bible speaks concerning hurting children, and it says, "Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea." That's the Bible for you on issues of exploiting children, issues of harassment of children. So I feel very strongly about this, and I felt very strongly for a long time. In fact, when a child experiences trauma and abuse, we understand that this type of trauma and abuse stays with a child in some way for the rest of their life. I often say when somebody is abused, it's not like hitting a button and hitting undo and it's over. It happened. And even if that person goes to jail or whatever the case is, it doesn't change the fact that it happened to someone who was innocent. So we have all been advocates in a very strong way. The church has certainly been for the protection of children. And this has been presented to us in certain quarters as the intent of the bill that is before us. And if that was the intent of the bill, I'll be the biggest advocate. I have the loudest loudspeaker out in the streets saying, let us pass it and let us pass it now, because God knows we need to strengthen our laws to protect our children. There are too many people in our society, in my mind, who is basically getting a slap on the wrist when it concerns the destruction they do to our children. I have 5 daughters who are all minors, and trust me, I feel very strongly about that, and I'm sure every parent who is listening feels strongly about that. However, when I look at the content of the bill doesn't do any of those things in terms of protecting our children at all. And that is the issue I have with the bill. The intent that we are told the bill is for does not match the content. And this is why I'm saying to people, read it yourself. Don't allow, if you don't believe what I'm saying, get a copy of the bill, print it, and read it, because it has to do with either your children or your rights. What I've seen in this bill is that the bill presupposes that every parent is not well intended in terms of protecting their child, that every parent is liable in terms of abuse of children. There are, in fact, some parents in society who may abdicate their responsibility and abuse children, but I can tell you it's a minority. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't have rules and guidelines for those. But the fact that the bill does that and assumes that the state is better positioned to take care of that responsibility is what concerns me.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying, but I want to go into that section 4, subsection 2.
Are we starting at 4? Okay, go ahead.
You know, because I want to get there, because it said, notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, the minister, which refers to the Minister of Legal Affairs, when you say minister here in the case of this bill, may in consultation with the minister responsible for health, if he or she is satisfied that there is good cause to do so by order, publish in the Gazette, provide that a minor who has attained the age of 12 years but not yet attained the age of 16 years shall have the legal capacity to consent to any sexual reproductive health treatment specified in that order, including the diagnostic procedures, and his or her consent shall be as effective as if the minor were full of age. I get what you're saying, I understand, but I want to ask this question now. So,
can I go before you go with Devon?
Sure, okay, sure, you can go ahead.
Because I know Devon's going to hit this one so hard.
I want to say that to me it says that there is some level of consultation should take place. So I'm guessing that there is some investigation. That's what I'm guessing, right? That's what I'm reading. So from it, is there a minor report? Okay, well, I was abused. However, the child parents is saying, well, no, I don't want to get I don't want the procedure to happen. So I'm guessing it may reach the police, may then consult with the DPP, who may have to go higher, take it to, and then it goes to the state. And I'm guessing that the state, as to what should happen here, is that while the Minister for Health is supposed to then consult with the CMO then with the doctors on the case. So if I'm thinking it right, I understand you said that it's putting all parents in one basket. But I'm seeing this.
But that's a position. The word that you have said the most there is guessing. That's the problem with the legislation.
Yes,
it's not here.
Well, I'm guessing that
because
it's not used for these particular instances.
Because it's not here. If the bill is to do that, the bill should say that. But that's the problem in the way the bill is written. The bill is not saying that, right? The bill is not saying that. Gina did ask to go first, and I'll go first. Because you know.
Devon is going to start to kill us here tonight. So for me, and because as an advocate who worked with young people, Devon said his mom was a teen.
She was, yeah.
I was a teen mom. Okay, so sometimes people ask, why Pam, why this, why this? Sometimes we become champions based on our experiences, right? So I was a teen mom, had left school, however, so it's a little bit different for some people. And with my experiences of cases that we've had to deal with, there are sometimes when the parents, and that's why I said there is a small percentage of parents but the law is already there. Child protection law is already there. The Coalition of the Rights of the Child, and also there is a whole, team. Okay, you have SVU. The police has a whole department to deal with certain things. Your healthcare providers have their mandates to work by, and also the state has its mandates to already work by. So my thing is, the confusion in this is, if we already have legislations in place, we are supposed to be extending on what is already existing, bettering the situation. Because I can speak to situations where I'm called at home and say, one of our students in our school is in a situation and they need to be rescued and, you know, whatever. And so police has to be called in, social development has to be called in, because social development and education is also partners with PAM, right? And all these entities have to be called in if we're about to challenge something for a student, right? If you have a young mother, and how it is now, if you are pregnant and show up at a clinic, it's not that they would not give you health care, but what they're asking is that a guardian, we want an adult to come in here and stand with you to say that they are responsible for you. It is one way to try and catch a perpetrator as well, to find out who got this child pregnant. So we have certain things already in place. And my problem with this is that I would have liked to see specifications targeting the areas that need improvement and outlining it and growing on what already exists. And because I know there are girls that will need that help. But I also remember, you know, because I said I work with young people, a teenage boy, you know, close to the family, had an STD and wanted to get treatment. And knew exactly how he got it, who gave it to him and everything. And he said, and when I questioned him, he kept calling and I didn't know for what. And by the time, you know, he locked me down, he wanted me to come with him. Because, you know, I'm pretty liberal with my thinking and try to understand, you know, everything on the table and try to be objective. So he needs an adult to go with him. And I said, okay, well, what happened to your dad? His mom is out of the country, you know. He doesn't know how to speak to his dad on this. And his grandmother, he doesn't want to share this. And I was like, okay. So I went with him. But then after that, I gave him the full schooling. And I said, okay, so how did you get this? And he said, I get it from a girl. And I said, did you contact her and let her know what's happening? He said, she already is aware. Her mom's a nurse and her mother sorted her out already. Okay? So I'm just saying this so you can see that things are there and people are getting their help and doing certain things. And that's why when we put things like that, in addition to that, government need to take certain steps, I understand. Because when international organizations, you know, propose certain things and civil society, we are championing certain causes. Of course, we want the things we are championing to go through. And government is also under the pressure of maybe an external entity or the organizations that is coming forward and wants to champion our cause. However, you have a responsibility not just for the now. You have a responsibility for later. What you are leaving behind as your legacy as a decision maker, policy maker, as to the legacy you are going to be putting in place for the next generation. If you do something, and this is not 50 years ago when Grenada just got independence, the world is too open and there's too much information out there now that you can't have enough people to sit around the table and put things together properly before we try to rush something through that is so filled with space, so the objective really would not be met. Devon, you can beat it up now.
Right, and let me just say here, just for those viewing and listening, that I'm very passionate about this. So you might hear the passion coming out from time to time. And the passion has to do with the fact that the family is the foundation of our society. This is the foundation that God builds. Everything of a society rises or falls upon the family unit. And I've seen over time how, in my mind, there have been so many attacks on the family unit. And I see this as one of the most direct attacks I've seen in a long time, in terms of playing with parental rights, in terms of the family unit. And within our cultural sphere of Grenada, this is very foreign to us. Parents are used to having a lot of rights concerning the children, up to an adult age, right? And as such, we have the issue here is that we come in against not just biblical values, but cultural values as well. And I personally see this as an imposition. I do not believe, in my mind, based on what I've followed, is happening in other countries, that this bill originated from Grenada. That is my view. I do not believe that. I believe that this bill is an agenda that is being driven from other countries and other international organizations, and oftentimes out of disrespect for our rights as sovereign countries, these bills come to us to be imposed on us as payment for grants and such like, and our governments come under a lot of pressure. I feel sympathetic sometimes for the governments that are in power, and not just the current administration, past administrations as well, because sometimes they feel like they almost don't have the choice with these types of pieces of legislation because of the type of pressure. You either do this or you don't get access to these types of grants. And it's so unfair to smaller countries like us, because really what you do is that you come into a country, you basically destroy our structures that we have in place that keeps us organized as a society, and we have to sell out all of these values for money, right? Now, to speak to this section here, I have several issues with this section. First of all, that people read the bill and assume the bill is speaking about rights for children 16 years and over. But this section makes it clear it even goes to the age of 12, which is worse. The section gives all this autonomy to the Minister of Legal Affairs
And health.
And
right?
health.
Well, the section says that minister could consult with the Minister of Health. But the responsibility, the power, this section is giving the power to the Minister of Legal Affairs. And it says here, which I would like explained, I cannot explain, but I want to raise it, that by order published in the Gazette. That phrase is interesting. The Gazette is a public document. So you're telling me a child, the Minister of Health, thinks a child is being abused, and the Minister of Health publishes in the Gazette, this child, right, Mary Jane, in the parish of St. George, is suspected to be abused. What does that mean when you say that by order published in the Gazette? What you're going to expose the victim?
Well,
This if that is what it means, this would cause more damage in our societal context, because oftentimes the children
are stigmatized.
as a result among their peers and all of that. So, and if it's not the victim, then what are you publishing? Because the bill is speaking about giving rights to children for sexual and reproductive health. So this is a question I have about this section. What are you publishing? What is this section saying the minister must publish in the Gazette? Because this section is compelling the minister to publish in the Gazette.
Yeah.
This is a big concern.
Well, when we look at it, right, and I see where you're coming that it may lead to psychological damage of that child, because that child might be teased or so. And I'm seeing here the issue of, by order publishing the Gazette, is saying, okay, well, and probably to other professionals, this child should not be turned away if they come. But we have to look, is it the right way to let that be known? And I'm not defending here, and I don't want to sound as well defending, but I'm thinking that the case comes up. I don't think that a minister would just say, okay, well, let's sign it off.
No, we don't know.
Well, no,
You see, that's the
so that's
issue.
what I'm saying. I'm
And
thinking,
excuse me if I don't trust politicians with powers, right?
but
I would not sit in a society and give more powers to politicians. I would not do it. I'm telling you, I already believe politicians have too much powers in our society. And a lot of these pieces of legislation that is coming, giving powers to a single minister. So basically, you're saying this power that is now enshrined in all parents in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Matic, right? That's how the law is now. The parents have these rights. That now you are taking that and you're giving it to a single minister. And I'm not speaking just about the current minister. 50 years from now, we don't know who that minister is going to be, right? Politicians could weaponize this section of the law. If you're my opponent, I could literally weaponize this, right? Why not give, if you want to give some power, why not give it to the court?
that too. But I want to go back a little bit, because from what I'm hearing, that this bill was drafted. I heard that there were consultations. I don't know how well it was attended.
Consultation. I have asked the question in public space, and the onus is upon the persons who are proposing the bill to tell us. It must be public information. There's nothing secret about consultations, right? So there is a claim there have been consultations. I've asked on my Facebook page, I have a number of persons on there. I was in a consultation recently that was organized by the leader of the opposition. They invited the Conference of Churches, the Alliance of Evangelical Churches, and many other stakeholder groups. We showed up there, and I asked there, how many of you in the room attended a consultation on this bill? 0. I asked on my Facebook page, not a single person could say that they attended a consultation on the bill, right? So the onus now is upon those who say there was consultation to give us the dates, the location, the number of persons who attended these consultations, because unless that can be presented, we cannot be expected as a society to just accept that there have been consultations. We've been told that there have been consultations, doesn't mean we can accept it if nobody can say when it was. I am involved in the Alliance of Evangelical Churches. There are people who are listening, I'm sure they're involved in the religious community. Usually with such bills there is consultation. The Bar Association, who usually receive bills before they go to Parliament, they themselves said they didn't see the bill before it was due to be brought to the Parliament. Yet we have been told there was consultation.
Okay, so I see someone has their hand up. Sonia Nixon. You can unmute and go ahead.
Everyone.
Hi, good evening.
I actually came on today because I was in another session. So, Reverend Rocher, am I right?
Well, not Reverend, but but anything you can walk on. Yes, Rocher is correct. That's fine.
Okay, so Mr. Rocher, I really admire your passion. So I participated in that consultation. I participated as a citizen. I did the consultation occurred like 2 years, a little over 2 years, but probably like 2 years ago. There were people from the Ministry of Health, there were people from other places. I was just a participant because of my own passion for adolescent health, child and adolescent health. So I don't know. I don't know about a consultation for the bill. But what happened 2 years ago was the development of a child and adolescent health policy,
right,
which included a series of articles, a series of areas of interest as to what they wanted to develop for adolescent health. There was an adolescent health policy that was first done in 2014 that has basically not been implemented. And so they needed to update it. It's 10 years later. It was probably 2014, 10 years later, and they needed to do something with adolescent health. And I don't know if you've seen this, because I think if we look at it in a very comprehensive way, in a more integrative way, because this bill is brought up so that the issues of sexual health, and in particular, the abuse and all the rest that occurs. That's why there's a bill, but there is actually an adolescent health policy, which looks at how do we approach the issue of general health of our adolescent population. 10 to 19 is what is the defined age. And I'm sorry that more people were unaware of the fact that this is only to ensure this bill is written, it's a modification of probably something that exists before, but only to ensure that an adolescent health policy, that a space is made available for adolescents to be able to go to the clinic, whether or not the parents take them. You know, we talk about parents accompany their children, and that's still the law. That's why parents should accompany their children up to 18, 19, I don't know, 21, whenever that age is. And I'd like to ask, how many parents over the holidays made a decision to take their children just to get a simple physical checkup, to get the eyes checked, to get the dental care? Those are simple things that adolescents have a right to. That's part of the right of the child, okay? And we do recognize that adolescence is a time when our children are introduced to issues of sex and sexuality. Children don't tell their parents those things, but they're led by their friends. We understand. So I really wish you wouldn't be so ostrichy about it, because I think sometimes we, in order to protect what we believe whether it is from, our societal beliefs, whether they're religious or not, right? We tend to be a little conservative and don't want to take chances. The adolescent health policy pushes, if you read the policy, it actually pushes for the establishment of an adolescent health service. Adolescent sexual and reproductive health has always been, and in fact has been, the mainstay of adolescent health policies, unfortunately. And I remember discussion, some of which I initiated, that we need to look at the broader care of our adolescents. So while I understand Grenadians and leaders in our society's concern, I want us to understand that our adolescent sexual and reproductive health is one component, okay, one component of our young population's health, right? The young lady who does the works with the girls at PAM, she can explain to you. I was also a teenage mother. I was a big teenager, but I was a teenage mother. And I understand the challenges, okay? I also know that there are mothers who would come to my office with their little girls and ask me to investigate whether their children are sexually active. Don't come to my office for that. That is established. Do not come to my office for that. So there are lots of things that we have to take into consideration, right? If you suspect your child as being sexually active, if you had a place, it doesn't mean that if you have a clinic that you can't go to 14 and you're 15 and you're 16 year old. The objective is establish an environment in which our young people, right, those who can't make decisions for themselves, but in which our young people can go in and talk. So the challenges they carry, the trauma, the experiences, and remember that our young people are not just girls. Our boys are severely abused, even if it is physical, sexual, and otherwise. We have to prepare a space. I understand why the challenges we have with the way the law is written, but we have to, the law is also meant to protect the right of the child, and especially when it comes to their sexual health. Okay, so I'm not opposing anyone. I'm just making it clear so we can look at it in a broader way. That this is not just we want a law that to say, let children go and see about their sexual problems. No, it's a bigger thing than that. It takes into consideration mental health. It takes into consideration children who have disabilities that have never been included singularly in a health policy. It's a very ample policy, and I wish people would look at it. It's available to be read. Thank you.
Hold on. Before you start, Devon, let me just go ahead because I'll give reference to, because I'm the woman sitting in the midst here and championing for our right to choose as women for years, and also championing for a lot of benefits and rights for women and children over the years. And that's why I'm saying it's so conflicting, and I couldn't take a stand to say I am representing any of the organizations I'm part of officially, but I'm here individually because I'm a parent. Now, Dr. Nixon, I completely, from her perspective, I understand exactly where she's coming from, and as an advocate, I get it completely. As a parent, I must say that as much as you advocate for certain things, I can't imagine my 14, 15-year-olds, even 16-year-olds, seeking to have, say, IUD inserted because the Gillick, became an issue and they start talking about it. And I said, how do I feel as a parent, as an individual, that while you're under my roof and my care and my protection, that you've decided to take an action, you're sexually active, and you've decided to take an action that later causes your death or causes infertility or anything along that way, and I was not part of it, causes cancer early for you also, and I wasn't part of the decision making, and so I'm left with the responsibility to pick up the pieces as a parent, to sit and hold your hand through chemo and watch you pass away in front of me because somebody else gave you the right to make a decision for yourself when mentally you are not mature enough to make certain life-threatening decisions. And I say this because as much as some of the treatments for reproductive health and sexual health, it serves a purpose for emergencies and so forth, and people are allergic to things. There are side effects to everything. And so my advocacy for this bill amendment is education and clarity. And when we're putting things, that's why I said earlier, this is not 50 years ago, and we should not design this bill like it's for the Stone Age and leave loopholes. We must be specific, because there are going to be children out there that will need this bill or some form of protection, but the child protection laws that are existing is already there to protect them, and we need to build on them. And so amendment to this bill, why did we need to move up the age of marriage. I don't want my 16-year-old getting married, okay? If you are 18 and you could do all other things, then you should start making certain decisions at 18. I'm not being biased towards people having sex and all of that. So that's why I'm saying the conversation is broader.
Okay.
So
just before Pastor
yes.
Devon go ahead, I see we have 3 hands on the Zoom. We're going to take Pastor Devon, and then we're going to take Fred Coben first.
Right. Did you say Sonia?
Yes.
Right. Is she still online? Because I'm hoping she is. Because she mentioned consultation, and she was at consultation. But just so that listeners and viewers is not confused, I want to clarify that she also said she attended consultation on a policy, not this bill. Right? And if she is on and she attended a conversation where she saw this bill, she can clarify. But what I heard from her is that she did not attend a consultation on this bill. She attended a consultation on a policy.
Okay, so.
And I wish she can give clarification to that. All right?
So the bill actually, can you hear me?
I am hearing you.
I don't know why my phone is acting up at this point. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are. We are hearing you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay,
Can you hear
okay.
us?
All right, sorry. My phone's acting up when I get on this. So I'm speaking and I'm saying, Reverend Rashid, that this bill is one of the my understanding, because I've had discussion otherwise, is that this bill or this amendment, right, is to ensure that the whole policy, because the health policy, the adolescent health policy.
No.
Let's let her finish and then we'll go.
The question was whether this bill was consulted on.
This is one component of the adolescent health policy. The sexual and reproductive health component of the adolescent health policy.
No.
And it were necessary to have this to ensure that adolescents can have access to the care that has been considered necessary for them to have complete care.
When we speak about consultation on a bill, right? I mean, I was a parliamentarian. When we speak about consultation on a bill, right, we are speaking about the actual document. The government intends to table a bill in Parliament. Before we go into Parliament, we bring to the public this draft bill, right, that we intend to table, and we hear from the public the sentiments concerning our intent to bring the bill to Parliament. That is consultation on a bill. If nobody saw the content of the bill, and the bill took the whole society by surprise, we can't say that there was consultation on the bill. They could have been
I'm not saying that I have been consultation on the bill.
So that's what I'm asking, whether, because I made the point that as far as I have not yet found in society anybody could tell me that I have attended consultation on this bill. So I want to clarify whether you attended a consultation on this bill.
No, I did not.
Okay, so that's clear.
You understand that this bill, the purpose of the bill, you insinuated to things like we are being influenced by external forces. You know, I looked at us fail our our referendum a few years ago because there were things that we thought were underhand and all the rest. We can't shoot ourselves in the foot every time. We won't get ahead if we shoot ourselves in the foot every time.
More than 75% of the Grenadian population voted against the bill you're probably referring to.
Yeah, but they voted against the bill hard blanche, and there were things that were not. I don't think they were like changing the name of the country or something.
No. This
components were voted on against.
This is becoming a road here. This is becoming a road here.
So let's let's take it on a bit.
Yes.
We have
Everybody's
Fred
passionate.
Corbin. We have Fred Corbin on, and then we have Miss Jacqueline Sillyburke, and then Francis May. So we'll take the three comments.
I didn't finish responding. I just wanted clarification that she wasn't saying she attended a consultation, right? She also made a point, we don't want to take chances. She's right. We don't want to take chances with our children. We don't want to take a risk. This bill says in clause 6 that if anything goes wrong, and I probably should just read the clause. If anything really goes wrong while a procedure is being done on a minor, the person doing the procedure is not liable.
It's not liable. Correct.
So if your child is taken from school at age 12 because the Minister of Legal Affairs deemed that your child needs sexual and reproductive health treatment, and we're going to speak about that definition, I'm hoping, shortly, right? Sexual and reproductive health treatment. And that child goes and let's say have some kind of surgical procedure and dies on a table. The person doing the procedure based on this bill cannot be held liable. But who is the first person they're going to call? The parent who is not aware. Do you know that if my children goes to school, if the school wants to take my child down the road to the museum, they send a note home that I have to sign because that's education policy. If the child has to leave the school compound at any time of the day within the school period, they need a note from the parent or whatever. But you telling me as a parent that you could take my minor, and they define by law as minors because they don't have the neurological the development to make decisions on their own, could go through a procedure without me as a parent being even informed? I mean, come on.
Okay, so let's take Fred Corbin and then Jacqueline Silly. Fred Corbin, you can unmute.
Good evening to the panel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Riche, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good.
Awesome.
How are you doing?
I am fantastic, my brother.
Okay, very nice.
What I want to bring to the discussion to this evening is the fact that this bill had to have its origins somewhere. And it's very important to look at the historical context of anything that we see coming across the parliamentary table. And when we sit down and we look very carefully into the past, where does the degradation of the family unit begin, particularly as it applies to our hemisphere? Okay? And for that, we can go to the congressional record of 1963, where the Honorable A.S. Herlong Jr. from the House of Representatives of the United States Congress on January 10th, 1963, proclaimed the Communist Manifesto in Congress. And numbers 40, 41 specifically state, and they quote, "Discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents, attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents." Now, that is 1963. That was the Communist Manifesto read in Congress. The Caribbean has been under the influence of the U.S. hegemony with regard to any of its laws, irrespective of who gained independence after or before, and we're suffering the results because this particular congressional record was adopted by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And the European Union uses this congressional record to put policies in place, such as the Samoa Agreement. And Grenada signed that Samoa Agreement on November 23rd of 2023. And in that, enshrined in that Samoa Agreement is the origins of this bill that you all are debating tonight, which gives consent to children to make their own decisions with regard to sexual education. And then to make matters worse, as part of the Samoa Agreement that Grenada signed in 2023, you have the new UN Cybercrime Treaty, which opens the door to pedophilia and legalizes child sexting. So if you have already signed the instruments that allow your parliamentary representatives to bring a bill of this nature to the table, to put legislation in place that compromises the values of the family, compromises the decision-making of parents, compromises the entire soul of a nation, what do you expect is going to happen? So where do we go from here? Are we going to sit idly by as Caribbean nationals? I mean, I'm in Barbados. Grenada is my second home. And do you really think that I want to be able to come? Do I want to come to Grenada and with my extended family there and have to deal with the fallout of decisions that were made in error, simply because the World Economic Forum, the European Union, and other external entities that were influencing the government at the time? And let us not forget one important part. This bill is only being pushed in the way it is because the constitution of your country is compromised, just like how Barbados is. The Constitution of Grenada was suspended upon the declaration by the World Health Organization in 2020 of a medical emergency of international concern. 194 countries had their national sovereignty and their constitutional rights suspended. And the current Prime Minister has never, by parliamentary declaration, reinstated the Constitution of Grenada. Here in Barbados, we're under a fraudulent, illegal, illegitimate republic that never went to a referendum, was voted on by a white cardboard box in Parliament and 30 pieces of white paper with a tick box on it, and we're now under the auspices of a criminal, fraudulent, illegitimate republic. So what the hell do you expect can happen?
Okay, Mr. Coben, we do understand your, but we want to stay on topic. We do not want to go off topic. So we're gonna go to Miss Jacqueline Seeley-Burke.
Hi, good night. If I'm being heard.
We are
Am I?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay, great. I'm not coming on to debate the bill. I am coming on to, as a lawyer, ensure that we are not misinterpreting some sections of the bill. And so I want to sort of just raise some legal issues. Unfortunately, Section 4, subsection 2 is grossly misunderstood. Section 4.1 speaks to the 16 and 17-year-olds. And frankly, that is as far as the current reform will go. The 16 and 17-year-olds. It says, notwithstanding any other law, a minor who has attained the age of 16 shall have the legal capacity to consent to any sexual. That is unequivocal, the 16 and 17-year-olds. And that, I suppose, has been rationalized along the lines that our current laws allow 16-year-olds, someone is not criminalized if they have sexual intercourse with a 16-year-old. So the 16 and 17-year-olds, I think, is less controversial because it's consistent with other laws, and it's, what is misunderstood is subsection 2. This current reform does not deal with the 12 and 15-year-olds. Okay. It says that the Minister of Health, in consultation with the Minister of Legal Affairs, if they're satisfied that there's good cause to do so, by order published in the Gazette. I think, Mr. Rocher, you would know as a member of Parliament that you have statutory rules and orders. That is the order that is being referred to in that section, where, and it's a measure that can be used, that you published a statutory order in the Gazette in which you say, this is what we would like to do. It is not being done in this current phase of the reform. Only section 1 with the 16 and 17-year-olds is on the table now to be dealt with. It says that they may, if they think there's good cause to do so, publish in the Gazette what is called a statutory order. And that statutory order would deal with the 12 and 15-year-olds. But that statutory order, if you look at subsection 4, shall be subject to affirmative resolution. That means that it has to go to Parliament. It has to be debated in Parliament, right? And it also says at subsection 3, which is why, in my assessment, when I look at the bill, it didn't go into the guidelines, the protocols, those kinds of things that would be followed for a 12 to 15-year-old, because the legislation is not yet dealing with 12 to 15-year-olds. It says under subsection 3 that the order, meaning the statutory order that would have to be published in the Gazette, should they subsequently feel that they're going to deal, that they want to deal, not that they will deal, that they want to deal with those under the age of 16, that order must provide for certain things, including at subsection C, any conditions or restrictions to be imposed under the order. That is where the protocols, that is where the guidelines, that is where now you would be setting out, what are the do's and don'ts when you're dealing with that age group of children, should they even decide that that age group of children needs to be dealt with. This is not suggesting that that any government minister can publish anything in a gazette with the children's names or anything like that. It will simply be able to publish the statutory order that may apply if they have the 12 to 15-year-olds in mind. However, the only category of children that is presently being addressed by this potential reform is that is listed at subsection 1, the 16 and 17-year-olds, which quite frankly, I think, had it stopped there would not be this kind of debate. It was because the 12 to 15-year-olds were even flagged, right? But the legislation does not deal, the reform currently would not deal with the 12 to 15-year-olds. That is one legal point I wanted to make. And as I said, I'm only dealing with the legal points here. Second legal point is that, as we're all aware, there is a House of Lords decision called the Gillett case. Now, we are a common law jurisdiction. So that's just our history from, that precedent, especially legal precedent in England, has highly persuasive value on how our courts must rule on certain issues. The Gillett case was at the House of Lords level, highest court in England. And that court ruled that a child, that parental consent could be vitiated. They did not need parental consent for children to access sexual and reproductive health services. They did not even stipulate an age. They said so long as the child can make an informed decision, and they provided guidelines to medical professionals to determine whether they could make that informed decision. That has been applied for children as young as 8 and 9 in the UK. What the Caribbean is confronting right now, and this is why the PAHOs, the WHOs, the UNICEFs, right? Not an LGBTIQ agenda, a public health agenda. If you look to see where this agenda is, from where it's being pushed, has said, please make sure that you start to codify your laws in the Caribbean around this issue, because we have common law. And if a test case was brought in Grenada today and it had to go to court, there is already common law on this issue. If we wish to truly localize this, to truly bring our value system to this, we have no option but to codify the law on this, because we have common law. Okay, so I just want to make it clear that this didn't come out from some sinister agenda. This came out of a gap that existed because the common law states something that our legislation does not address. Okay, and I don't think we can deny that you had the common law going in one direction, but you did not have legislation that could address that.
Thank you.
But more importantly, the total misunderstanding of Section 4.2 that I think has to really be taken into consideration. I'm really sorry, but I actually have to go into another meeting.
Thank you, Ms.
Stay
Burke.
to listen as long as I can.
Thank you, Mrs. Burke. Anyone care to respond?
Well, I mean, a whole lot has been said, and the reason you have lawyers that go to court is because lawyers have different opinions. And it's an opinion. What we heard is an opinion, not a fact, an opinion. There are lawyers who have heard spoken of this bill and have a totally different opinion than has been shared by this attorney who I respect. Now, she's basically suggesting, because of a case, we need to realign our laws. I don't share that view at all. There are different values that exist in those societies that we shouldn't allow the pressure on the laws of our society. We shouldn't just bend because everybody else is bending. And we spoke about Section 4, but we haven't touched Clause 3, which I think is a clause that presents the biggest issue to a lot of parents, right? And I wish we'll read it in its full so that listeners are able to hear what it says. It's on the first page of the bill, right? So people can really hear what that says concerning even your 16-year-old. And I know we spoke about that, and just so that we can be mindful, there was another bill that is brought before Parliament to increase the age for marriage, yes? And which I don't have a problem with, by the way. I can support that bill to increase the age for marriage, because we know that within our society there's confusion about what an adult can do and what an adult cannot do, and at age 18 you still need parents to sign for you to get married and whatever. So the administration was trying to regularize all of that. But it seemed confusing to me that while you're increasing the age for marriage, you're not thinking about the age for sexual consent. When the persons within that age group falls within what we define as a minor. So now it's okay to basically engage in activities as a minor of a sexual nature, but you cannot get married at that age. We also had legislation that was brought in recent times that increases the age persons should stay in school. So all of that is conflicting. I'm just saying that it is conflicting. And so if we're speaking about realignment of laws, right, to deal with gaps and so forth that exist, well, let's do that. But not in a manner that is confliction and that strips away at the values, the family values of our society, right? Now, I don't see this as necessarily an attack on religion. I see this bill as an attack on the rights of parents. Because, and this is why this clause 3, I wish we can read it. Because it clearly says that a child should have access to what is considered to be sexual and reproductive rights without parents being knowledgeable. Why shouldn't parents then be knowledgeable? Is it that there's a presupposition and assumption that every parent doesn't have the best interests of the children at heart? Does the state have a greater interest in children than parents would have interest?
Right, so we still have a hand up. Yes, I'll get to it just a bit. You know, as Jeanette said earlier, is that young boy who wanted her and could not talk to the father. From my experience, children are sometimes fearful because in the home they still see it as taboo. They may quicker talk to somebody they do not know because they feel, okay, talk to them now and it's over. However, if I talk to mommy or daddy, they may come back and ask me about it later.
I knew I brought it.
But the bill is not about who to talk to. Children can talk to people. There are counselors at schools. At the high schools and so on. There are counselors. There are people to talk to. So it's not a problem that our society doesn't give children the opportunity to speak and to express themselves. That is not what the bill is dealing with. Right?
But it says 16 and over for clause 3?
Yes, clause 3 is what I want. But we must read what the clause is saying so that listeners can hear what the clause is saying.
My 2 cents in this, right, is, and I would stick to this because speaking to my sisters and my brothers as well in other organizations as to how they feel about this, okay, is that we agree that this is too broad and it does not give specifics. And so I say yes, there are children that is going to need help and we have to put the right processes in place to help them. Education needs to take place. I give you an example. As we say, when I became a young lady, that's how they used to say it back then. For most, if you're younger and you're on this thing, we will say when your menstrual cycle starts. I grew up with my grandmother. My birds and the bees lesson then was, you see this thing that happened to you now, Jeanette? When you interfere with boys, you're going to get pregnant. No, that was the only education I get there. My thought then was, if I hit a boy and run, I might get pregnant. Thank God I went into secondary school within that same year. And what I got was HFLE. And my teacher was quite open and liberal enough to teach us and to guide us how to care ourselves as young women with your cycle, and also start telling us things about sexual intercourse and how to prepare yourself and care yourself in a way. Not that you should, always abstinence. However, in the event this is going to happen, this is what should happen. And I could say this thing really saved me. And education is important, and that's why I say we need to be clear, and we need to be clear as to when we're going to play with the bill, when we're going to play with this bill, that we're going to put it in a way that it survives us all. We are not putting this together for us that are adults. We're putting it together for our children and their children. So let's do it right.
Okay. And just so that there's understanding.
Hold on.
Yes.
Ms. Sillybuck said she has to leave, but she wants to make one last comment.
Oh no, I want to make my point before she does, because we gave a lot of time to her, and I try not to get into the details of all that she said, because I just didn't want to go into all of the details, right? But the clause 3 that I'm mentioning, we are not addressing that clause, right? She had suggested that if it was just that clause, everybody would be fine. But that's not the case. In fact, I believe that's the clause most people have read. Yes? I believe that's the clause most people. My thing is that if you intend to do something for the health and well-being of our children, then why not include the parents? And if you're intending to have legislation to address parents who are abusing children, like persons who are within home, then say that. Be specific in the bill. But for parents, who, by the way, is in the majority, who are well intent on looking after the best interests of their children and all of that, why would you infringe on the rights of parents to know and to be involved in the lives of the children in that way? We're speaking about sexual and reproductive health, and that has a very broad definition. I'm telling you, my brother. It has a broad definition in the United Nations. It has a broad definition in the Organization of American States. And when I speak about the origin of this bill, I'm not speaking hearsay. There is information I'll be releasing in coming weeks concerning the origin of this bill, because Grenada is not the only place, right? So it shouldn't be said to us as though, we're just looking to deal with health and so forth, and the health of our children, and whether our children have been able to get checks during the holidays. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with that. Yes? If it is intending to do that, then include the parents. But why not include the parent? And I think this bill, in a way, empowers those people who will seek to take advantage of children. Because now you can say to a child who you have abused and harassed, don't tell your mother, and don't tell your father, you could go for yourself and check, and the doctor going to help you. And the parent don't have to know. That's a problem. That is a problem.
Okay, Miss Buck, Miss Silly Buck, are you there still?
Hi.
Okay.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yes. I just hope that Devon understands what my entry point is. My entry point was simply to shine some legal sort of light on this. That subsection 2 makes it clear that we're not dealing with the 12 to 15-year-olds now. That's not what's being proposed in the legislation. So all of the talk about my 12-year-old and my 13-year-old and my 14 and my 15-year-old doesn't apply to this bill. And so there was a misunderstanding about what this order was and the minister. So I just simply tried to explain that so that we don't get, we don't get sidetracked. Subsection 3 pertains to that category of children. It speaks to the order, an order under subsection 2. So subsection 3 refers to the category of children under subsection 2 that is not currently being dealt with by this legislation, and says that you have to talk about what the minimum age would be, what are the conditions or restrictions. So it is placing an onus on the powers that be that when they do, or if they do, because we don't even know if that will be done, if they choose to put a statutory order in the Gazette, it must address these things in subsection 3. And I also just want to very quickly say that I never said that the law, the statutory law must align with foreign law. I simply said that because of the foreign law that has persuasive power, it puts an onus on us to create statutory law to address it. If not, we have to rely on common law. But we can control what that statutory law will look like. I am not suggesting that the statutory law should be consistent with anything, but it is the impetus for why we have to deal with this legislatively, because there's common law on it. Okay, that is solely my point. So I need to end there, but I don't want, I had reservations about even contributing.
No, your contribution is welcome. It's welcome. I hope probably next time we'll have you on the panel. So thank you very much. We have Francis and Mady. We have about 26 more minutes. I do take in mind that our panelists will need a beauty sleep. So we have about 26 more minutes.
I like beauty work.
Francis Amede, are you on and you can go ahead? Okay, so Francis Amede seems might be having some problems with the mic. We're going to John T. Pierre. John T. Pierre?
Hi, good night.
Good night, John T.
Everyone's hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Right. To start, before I get to my point, I'd like to rectify something that I think Mr. Devon had said after Mrs. Burke's contribution. It wasn't that she was sharing opinions, she was dealing with facts. Facts to clarify the misunderstandings that you shared before pertaining to the Gazette and the power that the minister had. Just to clarify that wasn't opinions, that was facts she was going to clarify your misunderstanding. But I will share my opinion now. To start, I think it's important that we look beyond ourselves and really recognize that there's a greater need for this bill besides Miss James and the bishop. That being that not everyone or every child has that protective guardianship that you offer your children. There are children who are left behind and who are being preyed upon by their very own parents. And that must be taken into consideration. And hearing you guys speak tonight, I'm hearing a lot about cultural values, morality, and etc. of all that is not empirical data. It's important that we separate the should world from the real world. And Ms. James, I heard you talk about the Pandora's box, and I'm asking, what is in the Pandora's box again if early sexual activity starts from ages between 7 to 9, and Grenada is among the highest rates for incest? What is more to come? And where do we start to mitigate that, to alleviate that? And I think this is where this bill comes in particular. And also, Mr. Devon, I think, or Bishop, I'll just say, I find it very interesting that your basis of information or contributions was from opposition. And I only say that because...
No.
Okay. So we don't, remember, we're not going into any politics. We are having healthy, and I would allow you to continue, but be mindful of assumptions or implied meanings that may come across.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that, and I understand.
Okay.
But okay. I'm not trying to insinuate or imply anything. I'm just going off what his earlier statement was, that he had asked he had a rally with opposition. I'm correct? You correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I never said that.
And you asked if yes?
No. You probably misunderstood, misheard, or you misrepresenting. Well, one of those.
So you didn't attend.
Okay, so what was said is that there was a consultation, and in the consultation he asked the people there if they had attended any consultation. There was a consultation held by the opposition, and he asked if there was any, and he asked the attendees if they had attended any consultation prior about the bill.
Right, and I'm only saying that to say that I find that the organization of particular rallies and other movements is just using the miseducation of the public for political gain, I find. I think there hasn't been any in-depth conversation about the bill with good intentions for the betterment of people. Rather, there is a whole lot of weaponization of miseducation for political gain.
No, we get very political. I am not.
Okay, Mr. Pierre, we're not going down a political road.
No, this is getting too political.
All right. So I take your point. I take your first point. And I understand what you're saying. You're saying that there are children who are not given that care or that protection in the family and may need it, right? So,
can I just say a couple of things? First of all, when Mrs. Citybuck shared earlier, I did ask what somebody needs to explain. What do they mean here by Gazette? Putting what in the Gazette? She suggested that they were speaking about the SRNO, and I know not everybody who is sitting and listening may understand all the technicalities and so on. So I'm trying not to become too technical with all the technical terms and processes and so forth. But she's speaking about the statutory rules and orders that will follow the bill. So she clarified that. But she made other statements. And I was saying, as she was sharing from a legal perspective. And I'm saying every lawyer is entitled to their opinion. I've heard other lawyers, including at the consultation that I referenced earlier, there were legal minds there, lawyers who spoke against the bill, suggesting directly the opposite of what is being suggested by the lawyer. So that's the point I was making, that is her opinion. It is not a statement of fact, right? Relative to what the person who was just contributing is speaking and saying about values. The issue here is not about, as I said, it's not about church values or biblical values necessarily. The issues here is that this bill is an affront on every parent, whether you're religious or not religious, because there are parents who are not religious at all. Some of them may be atheists or whatever else, agnostic, yes, who really believe that this bill should not become law because it stands in the way of them being able to perform their parental rights. And this is the problem. The problem is that clause 3, and I wasn't making reference to the subsection under section 4. I was referring to clause 3, which is on page 1 of the bill, that speaks to providing sexual and reproductive health to children, and specifically says without parents. And I'm saying, if the intent is to provide health care, why do you have to specify that there should not be the engagement of parent? And if, as being suggested, and I said this from the get-go, right? The contributor, again, maybe he wasn't here from the beginning. I even read a scripture concerning how we should treat as a society with persons who are, I can't even find words to describe them because they are sick, really. Sick people in our society who seek to abuse innocent children, how we should deal with them. And if the bill is intended to deal with these people, I am all for it, but you need to say that parents who are accused of incest, parents who are accused of not reporting sexual harassment of children or whatever else, children who report that they've been harassed, be specific. Right. But don't take away the rights of all parents in society.
Okay. So I have a question before we take the name.
Can I touch as well?
Yes.
Just before, I'm not going to be long. Because he also made reference to my Pandora box. And I think I said earlier that there are elements to this that I agree with as an advocate. I agree that our children need assistance. For one, I know the stats on what it looks like in terms of STDs and STIs. I deal with teenage pregnancy and all that comes with incest. We have not just incest of parents, you have uncles and cousins and grandparents, right? So I am not in any way in support of them continuing to do that. And for us not bringing to the table things that will protect our children against predators. I want to protect our children against predators. And to persons who are listening, understand that some of us advocate not just because we just pick up a cause. We speak from a place where we know we've been preyed on ourselves, and I am one of those. So this is where we're coming from, and we want to protect our children.
Noted. I have a question. We have about 15 more minutes. Pastor Rashi, so now if that bill had stated, the limit, children who report that they are sexually abused, but however their parents or their guardian is not allowing for medical intervention to gather evidence. And they said, then the minister, Attorney General and the Minister of Health can make a decision to grant that person the legal authority to make that decision for themselves. What would you do?
I'm on board. If the bill is concerning persons who are accused of incest and harassment of minors, and the feeling is that the parents are not allowing them to go to report, certainly the child should have the right to get whatever help is needed, including making sure that the parents face the full weight of the law. We cannot have this type of thing in our society.
Okay.
We just can't. And I know in some way there's legislation already in the books that speaks to some of that. Child Protection Authority is given some powers. Child Protection Authority is already given certain powers by legislation to help with children who are able to go and report. Listen, we have a lot of, in our society, we do have people who do sick things. And it is not a new thing, right? When you look at the history of the age of which many people got pregnant, it's not a new thing. But we have more reporting now. People are more empowered now. Jeanette mentioned people are more informed now. But I'm saying, if it was directly saying persons accused of incest, persons who abuse minors, who are not allowing reporting to happen, or whatever the case is, yes, I'm on board. I'm on board to strengthen any legislation that deal with these sick people in our society.
Okay. The next question is, child comes in with an STI, has to go to the doctor. However, that child is fearful that because the parents beats the child and would beat that child with anything, and that child is fearful, and the child is telling the doctor, I do not want my parents to know, I do not want my guardian to know. How will you treat with that?
You see, and you can't, like a child having an STI is not an isolated issue. So you cannot just see, okay, just go in and get treatment for the STI. There are other issues there that needs addressing, including parenting.
16 and over, right?
But the current law gives children ages 16 and over the opportunity for sexual consent, which I don't agree with, by the way.
Yeah, but then I think if the child has to go to the doctor, do they have to get medical?
Yes,
right?
yes,
So,
yes. Because if you go to the doctor to do a medical procedure, and the medical procedure goes wrong, and you die, and the parent is not aware, this legislation is saying that whoever did the procedure cannot be held liable, right? But the parent is also not aware. And that's where my issue is.
So how
because
how
they may be, I might be a well-intended, I am a well-intended parent. Okay? No, I do not want to believe that my kids are sexually active. I would not want them to be sexually active before they get married. That's just my own values. That may not be the case for everybody, but most parents do not want their minors. Even if the law gives the right at age 16 for sexual content, most parents do not want the 16-year-old to be sexually active. But even if they are, and the parent will be disturbed to know that they are, the average child, I would believe, would not be proud to go home and say, Mommy or Daddy, I have an STI. But that doesn't mean it's not the right thing for the father or the mother to know.
So for me, no. It is something that I've had these conversations. I remember my daughter's friends coming, and we would sit down in the front room. People where you can't get a seat on the chair, you sit on the floor, and we're having discussions, and I'm being very open and explaining things. No, not everybody has that opportunity to encounter someone or have a parent that would be so open. And I know the reality of STDs, as I say. But could you imagine when a 13-year-old goes to the doctor and says, now as an adult, when I go to the doctor, they give me a form and they say I have to put in XYZ, and you have to put your details in. You have to give your medical history, and you also have to put an next of kin. Why do they ask for that? In the event something goes wrong with whatever medical procedure you are about to do, somebody is responsible for you. So when a 13-year-old come in, the question from the medical practitioner, although that child deserves to be treated, because from my perspective as an advocate, I want everyone that needs help to get help. I want the children that contracts an STD and or HIV or whatever, for them to get the help that they need. So I'm not against that. But checks and balances. What is the policy and procedures that is going to be put into place to guide this process for our children? Because you would have an isolated situation where it is something of incest, you might have a situation where it's someone abusing you that is not a family member. And then you would have curiosity of one child with another child. Does the responsibility now lie on the doctor to try to find out where that child get that STD, or just treat the STD? And in the process of treating that STI or STD, something happens to the child, because on that form that says you need to have your next of kin, there's no next of kin, because a government official and a doctor made a decision for you without you disclosing, how did I contract this at all? And without you disclosing what is happening to you behind the scenes. That is where the question comes in. And when I say it is vague and it is Pandora's box, this is where I'm speaking from. Because there are many predators out there that are pouncing on our boys and on our girls. They are giving them money, they are giving them gifts, and it is not a new thing. It is getting worse. Where you see poverty line and persons not having much, you have people preying on our nation's children. And so we need to be vigilant, but parents also need to be educated. And Devon, as you are here as a religious leader, it is something that I've always had. I remember a director from GPPA said to me years ago, that we've been trying, and because of where I was sitting in a position I had, she's like, my daughter was in convent at the time, and she's like, we want to change how we do things and go into the school and give counseling and, give classes and so, but we're having so much pushback from the church. And I know from that perspective, based on where your stance is, it's like we are protecting the abstinence, right? And this is where the clash between civil society and advocates will clash with the church, because we're going after what is best for the child and getting treatment, while you are saying they shouldn't. A religious person would say they shouldn't be having sex and this shouldn't be happening, and then behind the scenes again we say, oh, let's pray for them and let's forgive them and all of this, and so some people are traumatized by the fact that our religious leaders in the past, right, have handled certain things in a particular way, and so you will have the clash of civil society. And what I would like to see is all entities come to the table, our churches, our civil society groups, and our government representatives come to the table and discuss this and come up with what's best to protect our children, and come to the table very objectively and open-minded about the facts that we have a problem. Okay? STIs and STDs are on the high in the Caribbean and in Grenada specifically. Sexual abuse and abuse generally is on a high in the region and in Grenada specifically. But let us come to the table together and discuss this matter and find solutions.
Okay, thank you. So
I just wanted to say to Gina that I think the point she made.
Before you go ahead, I will allow you to encapsulate all your wrap-up thoughts in that.
This was sort of mine.
Yes, so it's no problem.
Yeah.
The point she made earlier about the church having to work together in partnership with civil society, and I think I've been seeing more of that on a lot of issues. I believe that we recognize that our society needs intervention, and it is not intervention from just one body. The church has a key role to play. We have always played a major role historically in advocating for the values of our society, and even for persons who perhaps don't have the appreciation for the role of the church. Imagine a society without the church, without the Word of God, a society without values. And I have, for much of my earlier life, been part of the advocacy concerning prevention of STIs, particularly in the heyday when HIV/AIDS and issues pertaining to that was really a big thing. And we had, I remember, the ABC, abstain, be faithful, condomize, and it was a priority of which you're going to look at your intervention. naturally, the best way to deal with any one of these issues would be abstinence, right? Some people would not abstain because they don't share that value. So you advocate be faithful, and then you speak about condomize. But what seems to be happening now is that we have thrown the A out, we've thrown the B out, and we're just speaking about just freedom to do whatever it is.
The C is out as well.
The C is out as well.
Yeah.
Just have sex and freedom to do. And now we come in to say, and by the way, when you do so, the parents, just remove the parent out of the equation altogether. Like you can just go and have whatever treatment that you need to have and so forth. And I did mention earlier, and so I just want to say in my wrap up, that this phrase sexual and reproductive health has different meanings in the United Nations. It has different meanings in the OAS. In those entities, and it can extend all the way to abortions, right? And in some countries, it can go as far as, when you speak about sexual and reproductive health, it can go as far as transgenderism. Okay, so when you put laws on your books, you have to be mindful about phrases that are very fluid in nature, because people can come and they can do things and get away with it. We know abortions are illegal in Grenada. We know it happens. Yes, and while we may not be supportive of it, we know that it can be very dangerous and all of that. And now somebody can do this, and they can hide behind this piece of legislation and say, well, based on the United Nations, this is sexual and reproductive health. Somebody who is taking advantage of your child, your 16-year-old or whatever age, that person can go and cause that person, if they get pregnant, to have an abortion, you as the parent not even being aware. Your child could come home bleeding out, you don't know why they're bleeding. Yes, and these are the type of issues I'm saying that these things open. And so I see this as a Trojan horse that comes in the name of good, but doesn't really do that in its content. I'm saying we need legislation, we need strengthening of our legislation to protect our children. But this piece of legislation in its current form is not it. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for all of the listeners and viewers, everybody who shared, even those I disagree with. I'm very passionate, as you can tell, about these issues of family and protecting parental rights. And I wouldn't apologize for my passion to protect parental rights and the family structure, because this is what we ought to do as people of the Word of God. But I believe the discourse is really helpful. I hope that we see consultation, just as you guys open up your platform, other platforms are open so people can add their views on this issue. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful program.
Thank you so much. So now we go from one bishop to another bishop, Bishop Clyde Harvey.
He's on. First of all, I want to thank everybody, especially the two panelists who have taken part in this today. And to say how much, like both Devon and Jeanette, I enjoyed the interaction. Just a few comments. First of all, I personally, and quite a few people I think agree with me, that the bill is not about taking away the rights of all parents. It's about ensuring that those who do not have parents, right, are getting the help that they need. I, for one, see that there is a tremendous need, and here Jeanette said something that rang in my ears beautifully. The problem is not about laws, the problem is about education. And we have a tremendous challenge. And when this bill began to gain some momentum, I felt very guilty as bishop, and I think the churches have a tremendous amount of responsibility in this regard. We have shrunk away from the tremendous task of educating our teenagers and educating our parents about their rights. But not only about their rights, but about their responsibilities. The point was made earlier on about parents making sure that they care for the health of their children by taking them to a doctor. My family was too poor to take me to a doctor every holiday, but every holiday I got a good purge of castor oil and senna if that was around. It was their way of telling me, we care about you as you prepare to go back to school. The other point that struck me is that we rushed in the program to talk about abuse and about pregnancy. And that, I think, was not the main point of what we're talking about, right? It's and then if you go down that road, the question arises: what about the boys? We talk a lot about the girls, and a lot of the things that we identified can focus on the girls. Another point that was made that I think is difficult, and that is, we talk about parents do not want their children to be sexually active. That is a Caribbean myth. There are a lot of parents who are encouraging their children to be sexually active. About 2 years ago, a parent came to see me with problems with 2 of her girls. We talked about it. I talked to the girls. I arranged for the girls to see somebody and so on. The next time she came to my office, you know what she said? Oh, I'm passing by because I just passed by Melville Street with the girls. And I shook because it hit me right away that she passed the girls through the stores on Melville Street. She was doing human trafficking with her own daughters. And that is happening much more than we want to accept in the Caribbean. And if I have a certain concern for this bill, it is largely because we have to find a way to protect the vulnerable. That is the church's major responsibility. How do we protect the vulnerable among us, especially our children? Right? And when I say our children, here as a priest, I don't have any children, but I'm very concerned about those children who are not properly cared for in our society. So education is a must. And what I want to suggest as a final note this afternoon, I didn't think I would have this evening, didn't think I'd have to make the point, but I've come to tremendous clarity about it now. The bill must be withdrawn in its present form. I understand that the laws of this country means that because Parliament's lapsed, it has to be brought back afresh in the new session of Parliament. Let that afresh be preceded by looking at the bill and presenting something that will suit, in the context of tonight's discussion, the deeper things that we want to achieve, not least of which is the proper education of our families on these matters, both our children and our parents. So may God bless all of you. Thank you very much. I hope nobody has nightmares as a result of the discussion. So sleep well and wake tomorrow refreshed and ready to praise the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, I would like to remind us, at the beginning of this program, it was asked that we be respectful of each other. I've seen some comments which draw very negative connotations of a person's view. While tonight we may let it pass, on the next issue we may not let it pass. While we want everyone to have access to the platform, we may have to restrict you if this is the case. And as we end, I say, is this bill aiming to protect children? You may say yes. Does this bill have things that may lead to negative consequences in the future? We may say yes. Should we do away with the bill in its entirety? That is left to be seen. Clarity, as it was said. How do we achieve clarity? We would only achieve clarity when we come together and discuss objectively how we can move forward in protection of not just our children, but our entire country. Listeners and viewers, I am your host for tonight, Kisson, thanking you for joining us, and we look to see you on another edition as the conversation continues at another time. Thank you.